The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned into the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Pennsylvania natives Tristan Warner and Rob Waltko. PA Power Wrestling. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Pennsylvania wrestling fans, you are now dialed into the PA Power Wrestling College Podcast. I'm your co-host, Tristan Warner. Joined tonight for the first time, it's Joe Youngblood. We will be bringing you Season 3, Episode 7. Joe, thanks for joining us. Good to be on here with you, bud.
Yeah, Tristan, thanks. It's good to be back. Coming off a weekend that I got to spend some time at the Keystone Classic and see some PA Power in full effect. And looking forward to rapping with you a little bit.
Yeah, so we got some good results from over the weekend to cover. We got not too many things coming up this week. Obviously, with Thanksgiving right around the corner, not a whole lot of matches and tournaments, but a couple things we'll run through. But, Joe, before we get to the Keystone Classic, which, like you said, you were there present, so you have probably a lot to talk about there. Probably the biggest thing to start with is obviously Penn State. Whether they had a full lineup or not, the 60-match dual meet win streak broken at the hands of Arizona State. So the Nittany Lions head out to the desert and come back empty-handed. What did you make of that?
So first and foremost, if any team was going to beat Penn State, I think I'm okay with Arizona State. I've worked with Coach Zeke Jones in the past, and he and I still in contact. So I was glad for him. And let's be honest, you don't want Ohio State fans or Iowa fans squawking about that. So Arizona's clear across the country. I'm okay with it. What do I make of it though? Tristan, it's crazy. They weren't at full strength, and that forfeit makes me scratch my head a little bit at 84. But I do have a theory on that I'll get to. I don't know. I'll start off by saying I'm waiting for Brody Teske to be the guy that everyone said he was going to be. He didn't wrestle last year, and Schnupp was in, and Schnupp beats him earlier in the wrestle-off, and Teske's been, kind of lackluster this year. I mean, just starting there, what are your thoughts on Teske?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to start too. I mean, me and Rob talked about him extensively in our previews and even just in our recap so far, and I feel like people are holding on to this glimmer of hope. He was a very high recruit coming out of high school. They know the talent's there, just hasn't really shown it yet. And I don't know that he had been really tested against a tough guy or even in a big dual meet situation here. But Brandon Courtney from Arizona State's obviously a tough guy, but he's probably right around the 20 mark in the rankings, and he not only loses but loses 19-7. So and as with Arizona State just barely winning this dual meet, that proved to be a crucial bonus point. So I think Penn State fans obviously are looking for more out of him or a change in the lineup. But moving up through the rest of the dual meet, Roman Bravo Young won a close one. Nick Lee obviously got a tech fall. That was good. But 49, a battle of all WPIAL Pittsburgh guys. Josh Maruka for Arizona State pulled out a big victory for the Sun Devils there, beating Verclaren in a close one, 5-4. And then moving up through, Vincenzo in another battle of the Whippeal takes out Josh Shields 7-4. So those matches kind of maybe gone where you think they would, but 84, like you said, is really the head scratcher. Penn State, as dominant as they've been over these last maybe 10 years now, it's kind of leaves you at a loss for words to figure out why. It seems like they struggle to find depth at a program that's that renowned right now in wrestling. It's and not even too long ago, Joe, you remember guys like may he rest in peace, Jimmy Volrath, stud kid, awesome kid. He was a backup for Penn State, and he was beating, he had a win over Alex Dieringer, a 3-time national champ. So Penn State, this depth issue isn't something that's always been the case. Just seems like in the last year or so, especially in those crop of middleweights, they've come up short to plug in a guy when guys like Vincenzo or Hall or Bo Nickel are out of the lineup.
So I'm going to give you my conspiracy theory on this, and I'm sure some other people maybe share the same thing. I think we as fans put way more stock in that 60 matches than Kale and his staff do, and the program for that matter. And feel free to jump in. They're worried about March when it comes down to it, and that's when they're worried about performing. And I'm going to say one last thing to it. I don't know if Shaq's hurt or not, but when I think about it, I think maybe to a point this could be a little bit of a mind game, and maybe or maybe preservation on Shakur's at his expense, maybe, where it doesn't give Zahid a chance to see what Rashid can do, and it maybe gives them a one up if and when they do meet at NCAA's. I don't know. Like I'm just kind of spitballing ideas here. I mean, Zahid, in rematches he's pretty good. I mean, Mark Hall beat him that first time when they were freshmen, and then this next time it didn't go so well for Mark Hall. And then they've traded wins since, but I think you give someone the level of Zahid Valencia, one, not just film, but just the feel of wrestling against them, he's going to find a way, or he's going to have a great game plan in place the next time you two wrestle. Just my thought on it. So I'm thinking that maybe a mixture of both of those things.
Yeah, you could be onto something there. And like you kind of touched on, if Rashid's not 100% healthy, Zahid Valencia is probably the last guy in the country that you want to throw him out there against. So that could obviously play a role as well. Moving up in the dual meet at 197, another decisive victory, which kind of, you could say won the dual meet for Arizona State, was Cordell Norfleet. He's not a ranked guy. He was a pretty big recruit a couple years ago, but he hasn't done a whole lot for Arizona State. But he came out with a big 10-4 win over Kyle Cannell, who, the stock might be slipping a little bit now. He had his couple matches to shake the rust off from taking a year off. He's still out to prove that he's no fluke from 2 years ago's NCAA performance. But so far, unless he might be banged up or something that I don't know about, but his results haven't been up to par for what Penn State needs right now. So the question remains, is Cannell going to be the guy, or is there a possibility that Mike Beard gets his red shirt pulled, because he's a stud too? So
Norfleet, I think I read somewhere where Coach Jones was saying that he would, if he wanted to be, he'd be in the NFL, and talking about his athleticism and what he's capable of doing. And so I think that's a name that's going to be Norfleet's a name you're going to hear a lot as the season progresses. But to your question with Cannell, I don't know. The guy's a great story, really a feel good story. But if I was a betting man, I'd say when the Big Ten duels start rolling around, the grumblings will get louder, and I think you see Mike Beard in the lineup, and it's just my feeling, because I think that lineup gives them the best chance to compete for a national championship, and this is they have a lot of the pieces in place if they're healthy, and again, Cannell could turn the corner. He could have put himself in position and win some matches, and the seat won't be as hot. But if what we've seen so far is any indication of what we're going to see, I think it'll be hard for the staff there at Penn State to continue to roll him out at 197 pounds.
Yeah, so then finishing off the dual meet, Anthony Cassar gets a win over Tanner Hall. Nice victory for him, but not enough as Arizona State pulls out the victory. Joe, kind of like you said, Penn State, definitely a team that peaks in March. There's no doubt about that. So, I'm sure this is kind of water on a duck's back. Would you say it's going to roll right off? They're going to be fine, but just kind of a shocking result to start the season off here in November. Let's move on. Another kind of surprising thing, Joe. I don't even know when the last time Lehigh lost back-to-back matches in a weekend, but also the guys the teams they lost to Princeton 18-14, and then they lost to Pitt 19-18 on criteria. And this all happens in the same week that kind of surprising announcement comes that John Hughes resigns as associate head coach. I'm not too sure of the details on that one. But, Lehigh obviously wrestled tough. They have solid guys in the lineup, but a couple upsets here and there. Some bonus points didn't go their way, and they find themselves on the wrong side of both of these close matches. What did you make of these dual meets over the weekend?
My first knee-jerk reaction is parity in college wrestling, which it's been a while since we've seen it. Now, obviously, still have your teams that are top of the food chain, but I don't think there's a true team that's really invincible. We could roll out the talk already of Penn State, Iowa, but we're not. I mean, that'd be something that you and Rob can do. But there's parity amongst these teams. I mean, Lehigh's a top 4, top 5 team, and they're getting beat by teams that that are in the teens. And Rider going to Minnesota. I mean, just in this season alone, I like it. I'm not a Pitt fan. I've made that very clear in general, being a West Virginia guy. But you can't deny what Keith Gavin and his staff are building out there and what they're doing. I mean, they're getting the most out of their guys. Princeton, Chris Ayers, another guy that just is doing tremendous things at an Ivy League school, a school where the academic rigor and the requirements to get in are second to none, and they're competing at the highest level, national finalists and things of that nature. It's great to see, and then to see these teams come in knocking off traditional powers. I mean, Lehigh's coming off a weekend they beat Oklahoma State. I mean, it's IBU, you beat me, and then someone else beats them along the way. It's great. To see Lehigh fall 2 times in one weekend. I guess now that this has happened, and I think as the season rolls on, it won't seem like such a anomaly, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, so looking at some of the individual results from those 2 duels, most of the Pennsylvania boys we would talk about here typically for Lehigh split matches, actually. So 49-pounder Jimmy Hoffman came just short, lost 6-5 to Mike D'Angelo from Princeton. D'Angelo's a tough guy who's been stuck behind Kolodzik in the lineup for a few years. He's been a 57-pounder, but he's real solid. But then Jimmy Hoffman pulled out a nice win over Luke Kemmerer from Pitt, 6-1. So he split matches over the weekend. And then at 184, Chris Weiler from Lehigh got a nice win with nearly majored another former PA stud, Travis Stefanik, who's out of Nazareth, who's now at Princeton. Weiler beat up on him 11-4, and then came out the next day and dropped an 8-3 decision to Nino Bonacorsi. So probably not surprising there, but a good win for Weiler over Stefanik. And then at 97, you have Jacobson for Lehigh, who wrestled Pat Bruckey from Princeton, who's ranked, I think, 3rd right now. 7-4, not a bad match. He gave him a good showing there, and then came back and beat Kellen Stout from Pitt 4-1. And then lastly, Jordan Wood at heavyweight picked up a major against Princeton, but then kind of the upset of the weekend for Lehigh, he lost 10-6 in a high-scoring heavyweight match to Demetrius Thomas from Pitt. So that was kind of a surprising result. Wood now has 2, somewhat surprising losses here in the early going.
Yeah, if I had to say which one jumps off the page the most for me, would be Weiler beating Stefanik. I didn't see that one coming. Not in the 11-4 final. I'm not to say that Weiler couldn't beat him. I just didn't think the margin of victory is what surprised me. But to what you said about Jordan Wood and the 2 losses, you had Kassar and as the clear number 1 this year, and then if Gable Stevenson's able to come back and clear whatever issues he has going on, he's in the top 2, and then you have a bunch of guys fighting for third through 5th, and Jordan Wood, in my opinion, was clearly in that echelon of guys, and now he's got these 2 losses. Orndorff's tough, but then Orndorff took a loss this weekend that I read
Hilger from Wisconsin, pinned in overtime.
Yes, and again, Hilger's also right in that echelon too. He pinned him in overtime, and then Demetrius Thomas, he's a little bit of an enigma because he'll win a match like this over Jordan Wood, and then he'll struggle with guys that aren't ranked. And if he can consistently put it together, I guess he can really push and to keep himself in that conversation of that second echelon of those maybe those 3 through 8 guys. He's before this weekend was knocking on the door of that top 8. Now maybe he's kicked it in and looking for a place at the table there. Yeah, so let's move on. There's some other quick duels to recap, and then other just matches that happened over the weekend that just had some PA boys in them. Starting with NC State, me and Rob were talking extensively about Trent Hidlay and his big test weekend that he had coming up. He had Lou Dupre from Binghamton and Ben Darmstadt from Cornell, both ranked in the top 5-10
range. I kind of predicted that Trent was going to go 2-0, and I must admit I was confident in that pick, but it was a bold pick because these were two really tough guys he had coming up, and he really rose to the occasion and got the job done this weekend. He beat Darmstadt 7-5 in the dual meet against Cornell that NC State won pretty handily. And then he went out and beat DePrey 2-1 in a rideout. So Trent clears his first two big tests of his redshirt freshman season now that he's out of his redshirt. And, he's going to be steadily climbing the ranks now, you'd have to think.
I agree 100%. I mean, those are two huge wins. Darmstadt, a former All-American after redshirting last year. I know Rob is really high on Louis Deprez from Binghamton as well. When he talks to him, he just says the guy's such an animal, and he is. I mean, he's not wrong at all. But Rob's got an eye for things like that. I would, if you had told me, or in general conversation, that he would go 2-0, I'm not so sure. But at this point, I don't know how you pick against him with anyone inside. Not named Zahid Valencia. With the way he's wrestling, I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be a top 5 guy on the podium. And I not taking the easy way out and saying what he's going to place, but I think top 5 is what he's trending towards right now.
Yeah, I agree. I just hope he keeps the his foot on the gas pedal, so to speak. He's coming out with a really strong start. He's obviously got the talent to do it. I just hope he keeps the foot on the pedal and just keeps going and keeps challenging himself against these tough guys and not backing down, because he certainly isn't so far. His brother Hayden also went 2-0 over the weekend. Didn't really have anyone too tough to speak of here. And then for Binghamton, Zach Trampy got a nice 3-1 win over NC State's Jarrett Trombley, who's now in the ranked in the top 20. That's a good win for Trampy, who also continues to ascend the rankings. I think he's all the way up to 11 or 12 now on Intermat. And then another guy, he doesn't really get that much publicity, I guess you'd say, so far. But Joe Doyle, he's probably a local guy for you out there and from Council Rock, Binghamton's heavyweight. I thought it was impressive. He pinned the NC State heavyweight, Deontay Wilson, in 35 seconds. And just the night before, Deontay Wilson had beaten Brendan Furman, who's a Cornell heavyweight, who's from Cannon McMillan, who's a big-time recruit a couple years ago out of Pennsylvania. So what do you think of this Doyle kid? He looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, Doyle, he was, I think he was third at States twice. Memory serves me correct. Him and Trampe are both Council Rock South products from that program. And Doyle, I could be wrong. I remember high school, I think he lost to Brian Upper Darby guy in the state semis who went on. Brian Kennerly went to UVA, went on to win the state title and is at UVA. But Doyle, he was just a better lack of a better term, a goer, and he just keep coming at you. He wrestles tough, and he has a propensity for big moves, and that was as a high school wrestler, and it's carrying on as he's going to this next level. And Trampe was a guy I just loved to watch. He was state champ his senior year. Sillen Perry, Coach Brad Sillen Perry from Council Rock South says he's one of the most intense guys that he ever had the privilege to coach. And, he just when he would ramp it up, you just had to get out of the way and let him do his thing. And he was a man on a mission his senior year when he won the state title. He was a runner-up as a sophomore, went in a tournament as a junior, hurt, lost to Jimmy Hoffman from who's at Lehigh now, and they had a rematch at States when they were seniors, and Trampe got the best of him in the semis. But Trampe's always been a guy, very technical, very sound, and just has a huge gas tank. And always just thing that still always stands out to me is just how he's always able to stay in good position and fend off leg attacks. So, which is, as we both know, huge at this level.
Absolutely, and just looking at some of the other tidbits from the weekend, in a duel, the Nebraska narrowly edged UNI. Bryce Steyert from Northern Iowa avenged a loss from NCAAs and took down Mikey Labriola from Nebraska. That was kind of a minor upset, I guess you would say, but those guys, I think, had a 1-point match at the NCAA tournament last year, both All-Americans. So Labriola came up on the short end of this one. At the Boilermaker duels, Clarion was present. They went 1-2. They picked up a win over Indianapolis, but lost to Northern Illinois in a close one, and got beat up on Purdue a little bit. Beat on by Purdue, I should say. Really, the biggest result from this one was Brock Zackrell took a loss to Griffin Perriott from Purdue. So one thing interesting about this match is Zackrell's coming up a weight from 41. He didn't really have much of a full season last year in his first action at 49. He just got a couple of matches, and then all spring and off season he wasn't even sure if he was going to get that next year of eligibility. As me and Rob talked to him as a interview guest a couple weeks ago. But he's kind of still adjusting to the weight, I feel like, at 49, whereas Griffin Perriott's coming down from 57, where he was a pretty solid guy, an NCAA qualifier, had some big wins in the Big Ten. He's coming down a weight. So I don't know if that's a size advantage or what, but Perriott did get the better of him in that dual meet. And then some other tidbits. Orts from Clarion at 41 got pinned by Parker Filius. And at 25, Gramacki, I don't know if that was his debut or not, but I don't think he wrestled early on in the schedule for Clarion. So I saw him in the lineup this time, but he got beat 9-2 by Devin Schroeder, who has been a pretty tough guy for Purdue. I think he's ranked as high as 12th right now. So a couple tidbits from Clarion there. And then moving on to the Iowa State duel. Joe, you probably have something to speak on this as well, but the marquee matchup we all talked about, David Carr against Caleb Young. That's Caleb Young ranked second in the country. It's a PA guy from Punxsutawney against Carr, who's just a freshman, but he's as highly touted as a freshman as you can possibly be. What were your overall impressions of that match, which did end up going to Carr by a 6-1 decision?
This was one of those cases where I don't know, Caleb Young's like right there on the cusp, and Dyson, don't be too mad at me. Like I'm just going to keep it real right now for a little bit. Caleb Young is a top 2, top 3 talent in the country, but I think for him to put together, win after win in big matches, I don't know that you're gonna, in these duels and with the crowd and everything, wrestling in names, I think maybe he's got swallowed up a little bit. He wrestled tight, and David Carr in front of the home crowd, I think that was just the difference. It wasn't the difference for the rest of the Iowa State Cyclones. I know some people had it going to criteria. I never saw it being that close, but I didn't see Carr beating Young either. So I just think in the moment it was a little bit much for him, and I didn't see him go out there like in the past wrestling the win. It was more just going out and trying to make a mistake. He didn't let the match come to him at all. So I just think it was just one of those matches where like he's got to forget about it and just go out and just do him and not worry about where they're at and who's on the other side of the line up against them. Yeah,
there's a ton of hype surrounding Carr. So interesting there. Usually you'd think of the freshman guy coming in as the one that has the pressure on, but I could see where in Young's scenario he's ranked number 2 in the country, and he's got this freshman coming in who's literally all world. So in his home gym. So definitely not the last time that those two will see each other. Look forward to those two going at it again, at least for the rest of this season. Some other results from the Iowa State match. Spencer Lee got a tech fall over the 7th-ranked kid in Alex Mackel from Iowa State. That was a big win for him. And then Michael Kemmer and Austin DeSanto, both PA guys for Iowa, picked up major decisions. Moving on, Oklahoma State beat Minnesota 21-12. Joe, this Oklahoma State-Minnesota match, in my opinion, didn't look, just looking at the box score, didn't really look like what you'd, maybe over the last decade expect to see, the stud names in the lineup. Both these teams are kind of either injured or just lacking some of their usual talent. But at least, not lacking talent, but lacking the same firepower of these, top 10 guys at every single weight, should you say. But PA guy Dakota Gear picked up a win for Oklahoma State at 197. And it looks like he's going to be staying there, I presume, unless he's planning to do a mid-season cut. But you don't really see that as much in college wrestling anymore. He had been ranked all preseason at 84, and it seems like he's going to be at 97, at least for what these early results would show.
So let me ask you something about Minnesota. While we're on them, do you now think that maybe they're feeling the effects of now? We're how many years removed from J-Rob being fired? Is the J-Rob effect now exited that program, they're not competing at the level that they once were. So I'm just getting your thoughts on it.
I just think anytime, you have a coach who's legendary for however many years he was there, decades, and the program changes hands, it takes a couple years to rebuild. I don't think that's uncommon. I think Minnesota might be finding themselves in that path, but they've also had some things come up here and there. Like you look at Gable Stevenson right now, he's trying to battle his way back into the lineup, but got in some trouble over the summer. They've just had couple of things happen here or there that have some of their stud guys out of the lineup. And like you said, they had a coaching change a couple of years ago. Programs changed hands. So I do think they're not where they usually are, but I still think they have loads of talent in that lineup, and they're still getting big recruits. So it could be just a matter of time before they're back to where they were. Time will tell there. Before we get into the Keystone Classic, let's talk about the Navy Classic real quick. Kind of interesting that those two tournaments happened on the same weekend. They kind of remind me of each other. When I was going through the Flow Arena brackets, I was almost mixing them up. Two East Coast tournaments with similar teams present in each one, had some PA schools in each one. Starting with the Navy Classic, though, Lock Haven was the highest finishing team from Pennsylvania. They placed fourth. Edinburgh took 10th. Just go through the results here by weight. Gage Curry from American took second at 125. He's a PA product out of Pittsburgh area. His only loss was an overtime loss to Nico Aguilar from Rutgers, who I believe is just a freshman, so Aguilar's pretty tough. At 133, DJ Fellman, who had been off to a rough start this year, took fifth. He did get pinned pretty early on by a kid from Indiana, Pepple, but he ended up wrestling back. I think he won all of his consolation matches. It was one of those brackets where only the the semifinal losers go for third, and everybody else, the best they can do is fifth. So he did make a run back through the consolations, but ended up only taking fifth. And one guy, I talked to Matt Hill with my interview last week. He's real high on this Ty Varndale kid for Edinburgh, and he had 2 ranked wins to his name already as a true freshman. He didn't have a great tournament. He got pinned by Steven Simpson from Old Dominion, a guy I'm pretty familiar with, at the very end of the match, and then dropped down in the consies and right away got Colin Girardi from Virginia Tech, who's ranked inside the top 15, who had also gotten picked off in the early rounds. So kind of a tough draw for Varndale, but not the showing he wanted, I'm sure. And then at 141, Kyle Shoup for Lock Haven finally got on the mat. Must have been banged up here in the first few weeks. Hadn't wrestled to this point, but he got upset in the finals 2-1 against Josh Heil from Campbell. I did not see the match. I don't know if you did, Joe, but it looked like on Flow Arena, just from looking at the stat breakdown, that he lost on a penalty point.
I did not catch that match at the from Navy Classic, but I like you saw the result, and the Shoup. It's a match Shoup should have won on paper, but Heil, that Campbell team is scrappy. They're Colette's definitely building something special down there.
Yeah, let's move up through a couple other weights real quick. Clucker for Lock Haven took third at 57. He got upset by Jake Tucker from Michigan State, who had a really solid tournament. At 165, Zach Hartman from Bucknell. I know we'd be remiss. Rob would be disappointed in us if we didn't mention him. Took third, had a real tough battle against Dave McFadden from Virginia Tech, losing only 10-7, but gave him everything he could handle. Shane Jones from Old Dominion, he's a Stroudsburg product, took fifth. His only loss was to Zach Hartman. And then at 174, a nice title won for Edinburgh, Jacob Oliver. He got a medical forfeit in the finals, actually. Wouldn't that be a nice way to win a tournament? I've always wondered what it would feel like just to walk out there and get your hand raised. But he beat Segrist from Lock Haven 10-4 in the semis. Pretty decisive win for him there. And then at 184, Corey Hazel from Lock Haven, who kind of surprised me to see that he was seeded fifth in the tournament, even though I think he was the highest, maybe the highest ranked guy in the bracket, according to Intermat and Flow. He was a fifth seed, ended up taking fifth, but in kind of that unorthodox fashion. He lost in, I think, the quarters to Andrew Morgan from Campbell, and then went back and won all of his Conti matches, but the best he could do was fifth. And then just to close it off here at 97, this guy's been impressive so far. Colin McCracken, he's from Waynesburg High School in the Whitfield, now at Kent State. He majored Drew Phipps from Bucknell, who I think was the second seed in this bracket, 9-1 in the quarters. Went all the way on to finish second place, his only loss coming to Rutgers' Jordan Pagano. And then another solid result from a PA guy. This is a guy I know personally. I used to work out with, Jake Kozer. He's wrestling for the Naval Academy from Northern out here in District 3. He had a pretty nice tournament. Only loss was to Pagano, the champ, 4-2, and then he ended up taking third. Let's move on to the Keystone Classic, Joe. I'm sure you have a lot to say about it. You were there in person. What were your overall impressions of that tournament?
It was very, very well run. The fishing was good. Just getting some of the things out of the way. And the competition was everyone was kind of right on par. I heard one fan say that they were glad Penn State wasn't there because it gave everyone else a chance to compete. And I agree with that statement. Penn State being there and taking their guys, they would have been the cream of that tournament. And everyone's kind of at a lot of weights, not every weight, a lot of the weights would be wrestling for second place. And it's nice to go and get your hand raised and against competition at that where you're at. I mean, Penn, it took them into the final round of matches, the first, third, and fifth place matches to seal it. And there's some pretty exciting matches. We're going to have Coach Reina from Penn on in a little bit, and he's going to talk about some of his guys. But at 125, Michael Koliako from University of Penn looked just really good. He was slick all day. He a little PA on PA crime in the semis. He beat Bo Bayless from Harvard. And I'll tell you what, I was really impressed with Bo Bayless. What it came down to between him and Koliako was Koliako just had a little bit more horsepower. I think Bayless, when he grows into the weight class, is going to be really tough because his technical ability is there, and he's just lacking the horsepower to battle with some of these bigger guys, the bigger 25-pounders. But nevertheless, fun to watch. He was tough on top. He wrestled smart in a lot of positions, and just all around just kept himself out of trouble all day. 133, Louis Hayes was your champ over Cameron Ferrante from Penn. Chris Wright from Central Dauphin, who I had the chance to interview. He talked about going in 10 takedowns with Jeff, getting all 10, not even giving up one to Jeff. So if you have a chance, pop on Twitter and check that out. And Chandler Olson looked pretty good. He was a little bit up and down and finished in 7th. Chris Wright, like I said, looked good, looked tough, and he was very self-reflective of his performance in that interview and talked about things he needs to do to get better. 141 was an all-Penn final with former PA Hammer, Dougie Zaff from Downingtown West. Give Dougie a little shout out. He's from District 1 out where I live, and a guy I covered when he was in high school, and just a great kid. He was probably pretty surprised as anyone to wrestle Vendici in the finals. If I had to venture a guess early on watching it, I thought it would have been not Vendici. His name escaped me right now, but he had one of his other Penn teammates had Brian Courtney on the ropes in the quarterfinals. Brian Courtney had to come from behind. He was down 7, I believe 7-6 or 6-5. And the Penn wrestler had a minute and 15 or minute 6 of riding time, and Courtney got a takedown with about a minute 15 left and rode him for the 1-point win to race the riding time. But then in the semis, Vendici spladled Courtney for a 6-point move. It was all the difference in that match. And Brian Courtney then injury defaulted out after that. I don't know if he was banged up or had just had enough at that point. Will Gill looked tough. Zaff just didn't pick him apart in the semis, but just picked his spots. And I would say if there's one thing, and even in his own in the interview, Doug Zaff was saying he needs to finish more shots. He was in on legs all day, but he was also he wasn't at his best when it came to finishing them. 157, Justin McCoy, lost to Jesse Del Vecchia, who's ranked in the top 10 from Ryder, and he ended up taking 5th. He lost 2 matches, but again, another guy I had a chance to talk to. Great kid, and just had great perspective on his performance, and it's a guy I think from one of PA's own that we're going to see as the season wears on, win some matches for the Cavaliers. This match, this weight class in my preview, everyone was expecting the matchup of two top 10 wrestlers between Del Vecchia and Artelona from Penn, but Artelona got beat by Zavitsaski from Appalachian State. It was really impressive. Real good motor. He gave Del Vecchia all he wanted in the finals, going to overtime, and ride out in the first ride out, Del Vecchia turned him using the Josh Jeva roll through half, and I even told Jeva there. I said, Jeva, you did it better. But Del Vecchia did it effective enough to get a few swipes and win the match. Cam Connor was pretty impressive for being probably one of the first big tournaments, and especially in front of the home crowd. He went to overtime with Artelona in the Wrestlebacks. So again, that's a guy from Kiski area coming off a runner-up finish in states last year, and he's out there grinding. Wrestling in these tournaments, and so it's nice to see that. It was nice to see all the PA guys wrestling. It's 165. Rob's guy Jarrell from Drexel lost in the finals to Canigliaro from Harvard, and Canigliaro kind of came out of nowhere and wins that match. Everyone expected to see Jarrell and Coy in the finals, but Coy got injured wrestling. Cam Coy from Penn Trafford got injured in the first round wrestling another PA guy, John Crawford from Strathaven, a freshman. Got him a nice shot, and they went out of bounds. He just came down kind of funny on his head, and Coy popped right up, but you could just tell he got to his feet, Tristan, and he was stumbling. It was like he was punch drunk. And the trainers came over and got him. And they took him over and they took him into concussion protocol. And he was back behind the curtain for about 7 minutes, getting evaluated. And they pulled the plug on it. I saw him later in the day. Didn't have an opportunity to talk to him, but he looked better than he did when the time I saw him before that. I was real impressed with Julian Goring. Tristan, I don't know if you ever had a chance to see him wrestle in high school or anything early this year. But he's so physical for being a true freshman. And Appy State, 184 pounder. He took second in the finals. He lost to Walton from Ryder, but he was good. And I got a chance to interview him. He talked about he needs to be a little bit more consistent in his leg attacks. But he is the guy at 84 there now. They took him out of red shirt, and he's going to be their guy moving forward. So that's going to be exciting to see for him and for us PA wrestling fans to see how he blossoms there at Appy State. And if I can say anything, Rob, I don't know if you know the guys down there at Appy State, the coaches, but good group of hardworking guys. Josh Russo, former PA Hammer from Crestwood and Bloomsburg, on the staff down there with John Mark Bentley, and I had a chance to eat lunch with them, and they were great as far as talking up about how important it is to recruit in Pennsylvania. So I don't know if you've ever had any experience with those guys.
No, I heard good things though, and they've done really good things with their program. I mean, they kind of came from obscurity not too long ago, and they've kind of developed some really tough guys over the years.
Yeah, definitely. So, looking at what they have now, they'll be a tough out in a dual meet, and they'll against teams of their own competition, and they have some guys that are going to probably qualify for NCAA's out of that SoCon conference. 197 pounds, Ethan Laird from Ryder lost to J. Aiello from UVA in the finals. Laird out of General McLean. Looked good. He beat Cole Urbis by a point. I'm sorry, Aiello beat Urbis by a point in the semis. And I'd be, I wouldn't be doing this weight class justice if I didn't tell this Cole Urbis story. He's been on Jeff's podcast before. They interviewed him prior to going out to Fargo before his senior year. But I tell you, Tristan, if you ever have a chance to talk to this guy, he's just like the nicest kid. But man, he gets on the mat and it like a switch flips, and he's just a different person out there. And he was in the third place match in a close team race down the stretch with for the Penn, and he was in the first period, took down McLaughlin from Drexel in this third-place match, and he got a little sloppy on top, and he brought him to his crab ride, and McLaughlin reached over the top and pulled him by the head, put him on his back for 6. So he leaves the first period. I believe he's down 6-2. Gets on the second period, and McLaughlin goes down, and he gets turned a few times. And I think he still won maybe 6. I think he turned him once, and he was 6-5 going into the third period. And I don't know who was cornering him from Penn, but kind of gave him like a wishy-washy, hey, you can go up or you can go down, you make the choice type of signal, and he turned to the official without batting an eye and just gave the top signal, and you could just see like all the wind and life came out on McLaughlin, and he just turned him like 3 or 4 times in the third period, got in the major decision criteria. And then he rolls out the wrist, comes around the front, locks up, and packs him up with about 3 seconds to go. And I'm not sure if they had already sealed it at that point, but they closed the door on Ryder from overtaking them, because Ryder still had Ethan Laird wrestling and I believe a guy at heavyweight still going to score them some points, but that fall sealed it for them. And Urbis jumped up, and everyone that was there was on their feet. It was really cool seeing the guy, a freshman in that position, taking the initiative of knowing where he was strong and he was in the match and getting on it and packing him up. And he even gave a shout out to his teammate in an interview who showed him that move like earlier, like a few weeks ago, and he'd never done it in a match. And he was like just trying to get the fall for his team, he said. So he tried it and it worked. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I got pinned in it. I asked him what it was, and he was like, I had to know it. He pinned me with it. I had to know how to do it. So it was just pretty cool. And Urbis, like I said, just a great kid. And in my interview with Matt Valenti, 2-time national champ from Penn, he talked extensively about Urbis, and he used the term, he's like a wet blanket when he gets on top of you. So that was that was the gist of the Keystone Classic. It was a long day, but it was a lot of good wrestling, very well run tournament, and I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to go again next year, being in my backyard.
Thanks, Joe. That was good. That was good, detailed recap. That's pretty much everything the fans probably would have missed. So good representation from PA guys, especially some PA young guys like Urbis. That's great to see in Goring. Really positive stuff there. Looking on to this weekend.
Wait, hey, Tristan, I don't want to interrupt. One more heavyweight. I got to mention Cenzo Paluzzi from Franklin and Marshall. He's a guy that, I don't know, he's got some of the quickest feet I've ever seen for a heavyweight his size. And, just when he's real quick at this, he's got this really quick, like snatch single. And he's a lot of times he's wrestling guys that are just physically bigger than him, and he just finds ways to win matches, and it's pretty uncanny. And he at first I wasn't sure what to make of it, and then by the end of the day, like I couldn't stop watching him wrestle because I was just enamored with watching him find ways to win. So I didn't want to not mention him in the recap, because he did earn that. I believe it was fifth or sixth place finish at the Classic, wrestling some pretty big guys. So sorry, let's get on to the preview. What we got in store for this week? So looking ahead to this weekend, like I said, Thanksgiving coming up. There's not a whole lot going on, but Lock Haven will be hosting the Matttown Open. Usually, mostly, predominantly a red shirt filled tournament or backup tournament. Not a whole lot of starters going to be there. But App State will wrestle UNC. We just talked about App State. That'll be a good test for AC Headley, who's moved up to 57's, been off to a strong start. He'll see Matt Zavastowski. That's a good test for him. And then Cornell will wrestle Ohio State. So maybe we'll see Gavin Hoffman in the lineup. If so, he'll have Darmstadt. We will also see Luke Pletcher and Sammy Sasso, obviously, for Ohio State. And then Wisconsin wrestles Iowa. And I have a couple question marks next to these lineups because I'm not really sure who we'll see, but Austin DeSanto, Seth Gross would be obviously the biggest one that jumps out. Sometimes in these big dual meets, you don't always see the best guys go out there against each other, especially early on in the year. So I don't know if we're actually going to see that match or not, but on paper, at least, you would think DeSanto and Gross, that's a top 5 battle right there at 133. Gross, obviously, national champ from a few years ago. That could be a huge match for DeSanto, maybe the biggest of his career. And then also at 141, I don't know if Max Murin is healthy yet or not. I don't think he is. I believe he was just in a sling a few weeks ago. But if he is healthy, he would have a good test from Tristan Moran for Wisconsin. So
Rest of the PA boys in that lineup, I don't know that they'll be matched up against anyone too overwhelming from Wisconsin, at least not in those. They're tough at a few other weights, but I don't think at those weights. But what do you think about? Do you think DeSanto and Gross are going to scrap it out this weekend?
I hope so. I mean, that's a match I've been waiting to see since Gross transferred to Wisconsin. Again, we're PA guys through and through, but Seth Gross I love watching that guy wrestle. The intensity he brings and just the way he hammers you from top and the turns. He just I get behind anyone that's going to put a lot of points on the board. And a little bit of what we saw at the end of the match the other day with DeSanto, looks like he's still up to some of his old tricks and antics. I think maybe Gross can check that and put him in place. I think Gross just has a little bit too much for him. Now I will say this: I've made this a prediction like this before about DeSanto, and all he ever did last year was prove me wrong. So maybe I'm snake biting Seth Gross, but I still gotta stay true to what I think and what I believe will happen. So I'm gonna stick with that. I think Gross beats DeSanto in a convincing fashion because he's got a motor that can go with DeSanto and he can slow him down. He gets him on top and he can wear on him. So as far as Mirren and Moran, Mirren's healthy. I like the matchup, but with Mirren too, he's a guy just waiting for him to turn the corner. I'm waiting for him to be the guy that consistently beats top guys. I think I used the term before with him. It's like riding a roller coaster. Sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's not, and you have the ups and the downs. And I'm waiting for a little bit more consistency out of Max Mirren.
We will see. That could be a big dual meet. Couple PA boys in that lineup, obviously. Spencer Lee, Michael Kemmerer as well, Caleb Young. So we will have those results for you next time. Joe, why don't you say we go ahead and dial up our special guest for tonight, Roger Reina, fresh off of his team, University of Penn, capturing the Keystone Classic. What do you say we get him on the line here?
Yeah, let's get Coach Reina on the line. Really looking forward to talking with him.
Pennsylvania wrestling fans, we got a real special treat for you here tonight. We are joined by Penn head wrestling coach Roger Reina. He is the all-time winningest coach at Penn. He is starting his second tenure now at the program back in 2017, 2018. The team is coming off already just a title last weekend at the Keystone Classic. So headed in the right direction again. Roger, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for coming on. Joe Youngblood here. And first and foremost, thanks for having us down to the Classic yesterday. Really appreciate you, the hospitality, letting us come down. I'll start things off. How do you think your team performed yesterday?
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're happy to have brought home the title in, our home event. And, we enjoyed 10, Division I teams competing there yesterday. One of the main points of emphasis, we had for our guys, the several weeks leading up to it was really to focus on, keeping the offense on, regardless of the score at the time and really hunting down bonus points. In the end, we wrestled over 100 matches between all of our guys that were entered in the tournament, and over 20 were bonus point wins. So, I think it was a good step for, really a young team with, we had 16 place winners overall, and all but 2 were underclassmen. So really getting them even in younger stages of their careers to think about bonus points, to think about keeping the offense on, regardless of the score was a main point of emphasis. At the end of the day, that's really what it came down to. The team title race was very close. Ryder, came in second place, and that's a Ryder squad that went up to Minnesota and knocked off number 6 Minnesota last week, up in Minnesota. So, good squad there. And, the Appalachian State squad really, kind of hard-nosed, tough guys, and, had a good number of place winners across the board. So, and then UVA with a lot of Pennsylvania talent on their team as well. So it was the 4 teams that were really, in the hunt for the title. But it came down to, a handful of points, and, the bonus point productivity, proved to be very important.
Over some of your individual results from this weekend, Michael Kolioko, as I think how you told me he pronounced his name, he was obviously a huge recruit coming out of high school last year out of Blair. He's living up to the hype so far as a true freshman. Talk about his performance and just, is there any limit to this guy's potential?
Yeah, Michael, has a tremendous competitive mindset. He's got a lot of skills on his feet. He's got a lot of skills on top, and he's jumping into the fray really quickly. But it's not really that surprising, to be honest with you. He was in the hunt in freestyle for the junior world team this past spring. His only loss was to the veto from Cornell, and and then he jumped up to U23s, trying to make the world team at U23s, and came in third. So he was already, wrestling and having good success against college level guys. Mike brings a lot of energy, in his matches, brings a really high pace, and that's something that, we talk about a lot in our recruiting process is, we're looking for guys that, that really hit the gas and wrestle with a really high pace and exciting style. And, Michael brings all that with just a tremendous, competitive mindset and a real love for the sport. He's a great student of the sport. And obviously was on multiple Blair teams that were national titles for the high school rankings, and so he brings all that experience, and we're just absolutely thrilled with his development so far. And I really don't think there's a limit to his potential.
Coach, talk to us a little bit about who surprised you yesterday at the Classic. Anyone's performance stand out that maybe you didn't expect to see have a good as day as they did?
Well, it wasn't a surprise, but, from Downingtown West High School, Doug Zaff, who was a state champ as a junior and a runner-up in the PIAAs as a senior, I really felt that, he's on the verge of breaking out. And he did that yesterday. Solid wins, and a guy who, back to that theme of scoring with the lead, he was scoring on his own leg attacks with the lead, consistently. And I thought he did a really terrific job. So really happy for Doug. He's been, knocking on the door, with national level guys. He had, win last year over, a nationally ranked opponent and placed in the conference tournament as a true freshman. Just missed making the NCAAs as a true freshman. And that was down at 133. And he's moved up a weight to 141. He's, filled out in that weight class extremely well. And he's wrestling, really, really well right now. So I was happy to see him come out. It wasn't necessarily a surprise for me because he's been, working consistently in the room at that level. And, but it was great to see him break out. Carmen Ferrante made the finals as well, as did AJ Vendici. They're two of our captains, along with Anthony Artelona. So we've got one fifth-year senior captain, AJ Vendici, and then two sophomore captains in Ferrante and Artelona. And so I think those guys performed well. Another guy that we're really pleased with, who's kind of quietly coming along, is Jesse Quatsi out of Western PA, Greensburg-Salem. And he and Cole Urbis, both put some significant wins on the board, including clutch bonus point wins down the stretch, which helped us win the team title. So Jesse, I think, really did a good job yesterday. And one other guy I'll mention too is Cam Connor, a freshman from Kiski area, who actually wrestled Artelona really tough. Artelona got upset in the semifinals by the Appalachian State wrestler, and came back and faced Cam Connor in the Conci semis. And Cam did a great job. It took Artelona to overtime, and there's a top 10 ranked opponent. For Cam, his own teammate, but still, nonetheless, Cam's been doing a nice job. He won the Michigan State Open in the freshman sophomore division a few weeks ago. So he's stepping into things really well.
Hey, Coach, something I saw on Sunday was that third place match with Cole Urbis. And, I saw him take top in the third, and he got reversed early on in the first period and put to his back. And then he rode McLaughlin hard in the second. How apt are you and your staff to putting him on top, given that he's just a true freshman, but also knowing how good he is in that position?
Yeah, so it was kind of a betweener kind of call, whether to take top or not in the third period. He was in good shape to secure the major. Generally speaking, I'd like to have younger guys take down consistently, just so we make sure we help them gain confidence in getting off the bottom at the collegiate level. As you guys know, one of the biggest adjustments from high school to college is consistently getting off the bottom and doing it quickly with riding time coming into play. But in that situation with Cole, he was really comfortable on top. He was dominating on top, and we really felt he was wearing his opponent down. And so, as he, continued through that third period, you could see him kind of like, gain confidence and gain size. And then, really with under 15 seconds left, got in position to go for the fall and scored that fall at 6 minutes and 58 seconds with 2 seconds left in the bout. And it really brought the Palestra crowd to their feet. It was, tremendous effort of just like going for it to the final second and getting the fall for his team.
Coach, you mentioned briefly Anthony Artolona. I know he's not a PA guy, but you actually just informed me he's got some PA lineage to him. He's one of the premier guys in your lineup for sure. Talk about his move up to 157 this year. Was it something that he was cutting a lot of weight last year, or did he just get a lot bigger over the summer? What went into that decision? Yeah,
it was a little bit of both. He had some challenges managing that weight last year. He did a really good job of it and took care of business, but, it just wore on him, towards the end of the season. And I think it also kind of limited his offense. He found himself, I think, in a lot of matches trying to conserve energy. And I think that was part because of the weight management. So we made a decision, really towards the end of last season that it was going to make sense to move up this year. And he tested himself up weight classes. At the U23s, he placed in both styles, up a weight, up at 163. And, so he proved he was competitive at that level, or national level up at that weight. So it was a pretty easy decision. It's enabled him just to focus more on, his development, and continuing to, improve his style, improve his offensive attacks, and just concentrate more on the sport instead of, on the scale. So, we felt it was a good move for Anthony. We felt it was a good move for our team.
Coach, let's turn our focus now to the rest of the season. What are you expecting out of your team in the EIWA and the Ivy League? Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's as I felt coming into this past weekend, I thought we were going to have a coming out party of sorts. I wasn't sure exactly what flavor it was going to be because we've got a lot of young guys and a lot of untested, unproven guys. So it's really kind of difficult to predict. Our goals are high, programmatically, and I think this year we can take some strong steps towards those goals. I think that, moving into, the top half or even higher of the EIWA is something we absolutely want to do and expect to do. But it's going to be done with a lot of guys who are, kind of like first time performers, I think. So there's, a fair amount of unknown. I think one thing that's really important to us, and we focus on this all the time, is the process of getting better and making sure we're taking advantage of each day, each moment in practice to improve as quickly as we can. And it makes sense that with a younger group, we ought to be able to develop, faster. There's more opportunity to develop at a faster rate. So I think yesterday was a really strong step forward in some key areas we were working on, and we identified others that we need to work on. But I think we're going to be competitive, throughout the Ivy League, throughout the EIWA. Certainly programmatically, our goal is to regain that, top position in the Ivy League and the EIWA. And, we've had, teams that had dominated at that level in the past. And, that's certainly where we're setting our sights.
Coach, you guys are going to be making a trip down the way I was down in college. I went to Old Dominion, down to the Virginia Duels. I spent a lot of years competing there. Is that a new tournament for you guys?
Well, it's relatively new. We haven't gone to it since I've returned back in this second coaching stint of mine. Had some great events down there, great competitions in that event over the years. Just have a tremendous respect for John Graham and his, development of the dual meet championship format, and certainly the McCormicks and all the folks down there in the Virginia. There's a wonderful, group of team hosts, that work with the teams coming down. And so we really appreciate the event and the founders of the event. And we've got a lot of respect for the folks that continue to run such a high quality dual meet championship. So we're super excited about that. We've got some work in the meantime between our trip up to State College, wrestling Penn State on December 8th, and we'll go out to the Midlands, which is an annual event for us. And then after that, we should be settled into our dual meet final starting lineup and have that in place by the time we go down to the Virginia duels.
So, Coach, you mentioned the RTC, and just, give us your thought on how maybe it's helped your team overall get better, and how has it helped the recruiting? Maybe for those that don't know what the RTC is, maybe explain a little bit about what it is so that they're more informed.
Yeah. Well, the advent of the RTCs is relatively recent. It's the past 9 or 10 years. They've really kind of proliferated. We go back in our experience, back in the days when Dave Schultz and a lot of the top guys within the United States were training out in Foxcatcher at Newtown Square, and obviously that ended, tragically. And, but we had the opportunity to work with quite a number of Olympic level guys in and around our college program. And then subsequently we formed the Dave Schultz Wrestling Club, out of Philadelphia and worked with people across the country. It was really kind of umbrella organization. And we ran both, the open level with the Schultz Club, and we also had a local high school level. So in some ways we were doing a lot of things that RTCs are doing today, kind of before the RTC name was coined. So, building the Pennsylvania RTC was really built on, those decades of experience. And as we were recruiting athletes and then, recruited Brandon Slay to come back to Pennsylvania, his alma mater, and be the executive director and head coach of the Pennsylvania RTC. It was done on all that experience. It was built on all that experience. We've got a terrific board of advisors. The partnership with Drexel is one we value very much. We really like working with those guys, and Coach Azevedo and the athletic director at Drexel, Eric Zilmer, just terrific people. And the fact that these two Division I schools are literally side by side in Philadelphia gives us a tremendous advantage. In the hotbed of wrestling here in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, also a tremendous advantage in our 250-mile radius. So it's absolutely, critical these days to have a, really strong, vibrant RTC. And as we, built ours, our first recruit was Richard Perry, who, launched onto the open scene after only starting to wrestle as a junior in high school and having some success collegiately at Bloomsburg, but really, blossomed on at the open level, Olympic level, number 2 only to David Taylor in 2 U.S. Opens and ranked as high as number 11 in the world in his time. So, like going into the, Olympic trials here this year, we're really thrilled that we've added Joey McKenna, Blair Academy, high school, and then Stanford and then Ohio State collegiately. But a brilliant freestyler and someone we think, is a bona fide contender to make the team this year. And then Ethan Lezak, whose brother Jake is a junior on the Penn team right now. So having Ethan come back to Pennsylvania as one of our 2 new additions this year, we're really thrilled about that. And then, of course, Dan Valamont is a veteran and returning Penn State alum and U.S. Open finalist in his own right. So we feel we've got a good group now, a robust group, and we are fully invested in, continuing to develop the RTC at all levels, the scholastic level, the collegiate level, and the senior level as well. And having Brandon, I'll just add, as an Olympic champion himself, an Olympic coach out at USA Wrestling for 8 years, to lead that, to work side by side, together with him, it's just a tremendous opportunity. It's a real blessing to be able to work with Brandon after all the experiences we shared together over the years.
Coach Reina, I think over half of your roster, just about that, maybe 16 guys are from Pennsylvania. They're natives here in the state. How important is that to just retain those top PA recruits that are coming out each year and try to get them to become members of the Penn Quaker squad?
So, I don't know whether we count Artelona or not, with his dad being born out near Pittsburgh, but growing up in Florida. But, even with that, Anthony, counting in the Pennsylvania rosters, we've got 16 guys on the team that are PA natives. And so for us, clearly all you need to do is look at the heat map of where the NCAA qualifiers and All-Americans are coming from. And, they're coming from this part of the country. We know it's an incredible hotbed, and I think Jesse Quatsi is a great example. He's a guy that didn't qualify for the Pennsylvania State tournament until his senior year. He went on that year and placed fourth, and here he is stepping into his college career. He had a runner-up finish at the Michigan State Open in the freshman sophomore division, and placed fourth yesterday at the Keystone, and he's already making an impact. So we know there's just great depth, quality of wrestling, quality of coaches in Pennsylvania like no other. And so it's exciting to recruit from our home state. It is the University of Pennsylvania, right? So it makes sense. And also from New Jersey, also being within our RTC radius, we've got a lot of New Jersey connections and the Blair connection. Now with 3 guys on our team, and like a fourth commitment coming in. So key programs that are in this region too. We're really focused on, including Blair and Bergen Catholic with Carmen Ferrante being one of our captains, and Wyoming Sem, and Cam Connor from Kiski area. So we're thrilled to be able to provide the opportunities that the University of Pennsylvania offers. Not only on the mats, but academically and in the professional opportunities to guys from within our state.
So, Coach, you mentioned scholastic level kids being able to go to the RTC. Tell us a little bit about what qualifies you to get there for those listeners out there that might be wondering how they maybe can get in there and utilize that resource to get better.
Previously, it used to be top 4 in the state tournament and then top 8 nationally. And they used to count the state tournament as being either the scholastic or the freestyle or the Greco state tournaments. But this past year, there were changes made, and the scholastic portion was eliminated as a qualification standard, and they adjusted the placement in the state tournament in freestyle and Greco to the top 6 instead of the top 4. So that's basically the qualification standard now, top 6 in your state in either the Olympic styles or top 8 nationally at either the cadet nationals or junior nationals in either of the Olympic styles. So that's the qualification standard. The 250-mile radius is the radius that's placed by the national governing body, USA Wrestling, in conjunction working with the U.S. Olympic Committee and the NCAA. So our 250-mile radius, around Philadelphia covers all of New Jersey. Not quite the entire state of Pennsylvania, but pretty much all of it out to Pittsburgh, not quite up to Erie, and then down through Delaware and Maryland and Northern Virginia, and then up into the southern tier of New York, and all along Long Island. So, that's our RTC radius. And the way it works is, once, scholastic wrestler becomes eligible, they can come train at the RTC, at no cost. And, that's where Coach Slay and, our RTC resident athletes, Joey McKenna and Dan Valamont, Richard Perry and Ethan Lezak also work with, with developing that young talent. So we love freestyle. We love Greco-Roman. We love encouraging those styles. There's tremendous benefit in terms of, developing wrestling skills and then also all the competitive opportunities that come along with that at various age group levels in college.
And Coach, my last question, I told you I was going to bring it up. Your hospitality room yesterday was top notch. Talk a little bit about, why that's such a big deal to you and your program to have for not just your workers, but for all the coaches and the media.
Yeah, I certainly do. It's the Keystone tournament for us. It's, great competition and allows all of our guys those competitive opportunities. And at the same time, it brings our families together and our alumni together. And so it's been a group of parent and volunteers largely that, provides the food and the hospitality. It's great to see them work so closely together early in the season. For the freshman parents, a lot of times they're meeting a lot of the other parents for the first time, at the Keystone tournament. So they really pride themselves, and it seems like, year after year, that one group's trying to outdo the previous year's hospitality, and so the ante gets raised every year. But we really have a lot of fun with it. It brings our community together. It's one of our core values is how important the community is. And, that's our parents, that's our alumni, and the surrounding region as well. So, yeah, so we're really pleased with that. We have a lot of fun with it, and the food's great. And, we welcome the other coaches who've been very consistent, bringing their teams back, and, all the other tournament staff. I'll give a shout out to Kevin McCleary, who does an unbelievable job with the table help. And he's developed a talent pool of people that are working the tables that spreads into the conference championships around this region and to the NCAA championships. So, Kevin out of York, Pennsylvania, does a fantastic job. And those guys come in, they volunteer, they work really hard throughout the day, and keeping the matches on point, on time, and well scored and well managed. And so we're happy to provide them the hospitality as well. They do a great job.
Coach, this is I think our last question for you, but I'd like to leave it open ended at the end. Probably some talented young high school wrestlers out there listening to this, maybe some parents, maybe even some high school coaches. What kind of pitch would you want to give to just say about your program as to why wrestlers should consider going to Penn? I mean, obviously you got an Ivy League education, but aside from that, what is it about the wrestling program right now that this is the time to become a Penn Quaker?
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting time, and going back to the very beginnings of college wrestling. Some people know, but not everybody knows, the first collegiate wrestling tournament in history took place at the University of Pennsylvania. So really the origins and roots of, collegiate wrestling starting here. And we're in the process of writing the next chapter of our program. So incredibly exciting time. I knew we would be recruiting, national level guys and national recruiting classes. But honestly, it's happening faster than I would have anticipated on the front end. So my first year back, that class was ranked number 12th in the country, using the highest rankings of the various polls. Our goal in the first 3 years was to have a top 10 ranked recruiting class, which, the current freshmen, Michael Kolioko and Urbis and Cameron Connor, and these guys are, that was ranked number 9th in the country. So we're well on track, on pace, hitting our goals. So it's an incredibly exciting time. And I think the fact is too that, we have, not only a regional or national, academic reputation with the University of Pennsylvania being in the Ivy League, but it really is a global brand, that's well known, throughout the world. And, we love wrestling. We work, incredibly hard. We have very high goals. At the same time, the guys that, come into our program, they're also great students, and, they have a lot of ambition, aiming big, in their academic careers and, planning for their professional careers. So it's that combination of, one of the top, institutions in the world, alongside of our wrestling program and the RTC. We really think it's a tremendously unique combination, for the most highly motivated student wrestlers. So it's going to be a fun ride. We initially with some early momentum in recruiting, it started happening a lot faster. It started to feel like a wave of interest coming into our program. So it changed from momentum to people started calling it the movement, and that's what we have going on right now. And people are catching on, and we're moving fast. And I just think it's going to be an incredibly exciting coming years for people that come into our program.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you guys the best of luck this year, obviously, and we really appreciate you coming on the show.
Enjoy it 100%. Really appreciate what you guys do for the sport in our state, and wish you all great and happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks. You too, Coach.
Appreciate it. Good night, guys.
All right, and we just had the pleasure of speaking with University of Penn head wrestling coach Roger Reina. Like we said, fresh off of capturing the Keystone Classic last weekend. They actually have a duel against Penn State coming up soon, so best of luck to them and best of luck to him and the program. That's going to wrap it up for us on episode 7. Fans, as always, thank you for tuning in. Go ahead and give us a like or a share on social media and spread the word about the PA Power Wrestling College Podcast. For Joe Youngblood, I'm Tristan Warner. We will see you next time.